field. We stay in college, and we've got Louis Riddick stationed at Ohio State, where they've got like half the first round getting ready to get drafted. And so we're going to call this our draft day Lollapalooza as we accentuate the Lou.
We always come up with something.
Because we can turn anyone's name into a pun somehow,
Easy
some
work.
way. All right, I got 3 quick questions for you before we turn it over to the group here. Let's start with this. Notre Dame had their pro day yesterday. Jeremiah Love did not participate. Candidly, he didn't need to. Louis, is Jeremiah Love the best player in the 2026 draft?
I'll just put it this way, Greeny. Jeremiah Love can have an elite level impact from day one simply because of the position that he plays and the way in which he plays it, which is he is a 3-down absolute just weapon, a guy who's just going to be able to produce explosive chunk plays both in the run game and the pass game. So wherever he steps in, as long as there's enough support around him, mainly an offensive line that is competent, he is going to have an elite level impact on that organization. And that's why you're talking about this guy maybe going in the top 4 to 5 picks.
Okay, the next one, Ohio State again. You're there for their pro day. There are so many players they have, particularly on the defensive end, who we expect to hear go top 10. Which of them do you think has the biggest immediate impact at the next level?
Yeah, this is a tough question. Look, I went back and forth between Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, but I'm going to go with Arvell simply because he's a guy who can play off ball or on ball and really can play any position on the first 2 levels of the defense. Namely, I mean, look, this is a guy you could line up over the nose guard in the stand-up 2-point as a joker, and he would just whip anybody at that position. He can go out on the outside and rush the passer on 3rd down. He can stack off the ball and cover one of your best tight ends or running backs man-to-man. He is going to be a problem to deal with from day one, and I expect him to be all rookie, maybe even Pro Bowl in his rookie year.
Almost every projection that I have seen has had him going either 2 or 3, either to the Jets or to the Cardinals. Then we go to Alabama. Ty Simpson will be on the field today. Obviously, he impressed a lot of people with what he did at the Combine. The significance of pro days is oft debated. What will you, as an evaluator, be looking for today in Ty Simpson?
Look, I think this is important for Ty simply because there's nothing like getting an up-close and personal look at a guy throwing the football. I can just tell you, when I saw Drake May a couple of years ago in person, it changed my entire perception of how much horsepower he actually had in that arm, and it really made me push him up in terms of my evaluation of him. Ty Simpson, I think, really could benefit in the same way. There's a lot of people who feel as though he's too slight a build, on top of the fact that he doesn't have a whole lot of starts. But I think that horsepower in his arm, that's the thing he needs to put on display to kind of like calm some of the fears that people have, that maybe he just doesn't physically have what it takes to be able to sustain a high level of play at the NFL for a decade plus. I'm not one of those people, but I think it's important to see these guys in person before you make a sweeping judgment about what you think he's going to be.
6'1", 211 were the measurables on Ty Simpson at the Combine. Again, if he were 6'3", 6'4", the conversation surrounding him would be vastly different. Another evaluator is Mike Tannenbaum. You were a general manager in a couple of different places. Ty Simpson has become, obviously, I don't need to tell this man to my right, the topic of a great deal of conversation all over the place. How do you see him? Forget about the comparison to Mendoza. Whatever anyone thinks, people can have their opinions. Mendoza's going to go first. I think we all know that. How early do you think we should be expecting to hear Ty Simpson's name, and how early should it be called?
I think 10 to 16 is realistic, and I think that's right. You hear the comps, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, because of his height. I think that's right. And when he was healthy, he had some really strong games in the middle of the season. Obviously, they didn't play very well down the stretch, obviously against Indiana, which is well noted. But to me, because of the demand of the position and the limited supply, we talked about it earlier, Greeny, when you get into the Minnesotas, the Pittsburghs, the Jets, even Miami, the Rams, to me, make a ton of sense at 13. That's where he goes.
Dan, I trust your evaluation as much as literally anybody. You like Ty Simpson, and you have from the moment you started watching the tapes. And I think there's one game in particular.
Well, I mean, I think I've said tapes, traits versus tape. And I would also say there is a conversation that Ty Simpson's play fell off at the end of the year. And I don't know if that's an totally accurate thing. Like, I go to the Auburn game, which I think happens the final weekend of November, and he did not dominate this game. He got absolutely abused in this game. But then you go to the 4th quarter, game-winning drive. He makes a 4th and 1 scramble. Really nice. You go down into the red zone. He scrambles on a quarterback run for a touchdown. It's taken away. And then on 4th and goal, he's got to go across the board again, fit the ball in there for a touchdown. That was like a 6 or 7 minute drive. And I'm just going, maybe the play wasn't as high as it was in September and October, but I don't think the categorization of there was this fall off at the end of the season is an accurate thing. If we're going to praise certain players for the way that they played in certain games, rightfully so, I do think that there's evidence that Ty Simpson had that in his game as well.
What are you hearing from people at Kmart?
So based on my conversations, everybody assumes Mendoza's going 1. So that's off the board. I even had one exec tell me, though, I think Ty Simpson most talented in this group. But again, he still said I would take Mendoza, right? Okay. I think when you talk to GMs and front office execs, they'll say, a lot of them told me they see Ty going in the 20s. Probably around 21, Pittsburgh, that would be the landing spot. But I've had other people say, oh, nope, he's going in the top 10. You know why? Because of his position. There's so much variance between, we used that word earlier, with the variance of these prospects. And I think when you look at Ty Simpson, these talent evaluators are looking at the fact that he's had really good moments, but also as one term, like WTF games, like full games of what is he doing. And I think you have to be okay with it, the talent, the leadership, all of these things fall into a bucket, and every team slots things different. And that's the problem.
Lewis, in Field Yates' most recent mock, he has Arizona trading back into the end of the first round at 26 and taking Ty Simpson there. Do you expect him to still be available when we get that late in the first round? Is that the sense you have?
No, I don't. I think somewhere in 13 to 16 is where he's going to go. Said this a month ago, and I think that's one of the reasons why. Look, I know there are many people who feel as though, look, Ty came out because he was going to lose his starting job. He knew he didn't have a place for him in Alabama. Ty could have made a boatload of money in the transfer portal had he decided to go ahead and accept that. I think he knows what his value is in the NFL. I think him and his father have really kind of gauged this market properly, and they feel, and I think they're going to be rewarded justly when we get to Pittsburgh and the first round is over and he's picked in the first half of the draft. Look, this is always going to be the debate, right? It's always going to be a debate about what exactly are you getting with a quarterback who has limited number of starts, doesn't have ideal measurables, had a couple bad games, but he also had some really great games. And you know what? We can go back and forth with this. But the most important thing, and we talk about it all the time, Greeny, on your show and others, it's the development and utilization phase of player development that is the most important. So for all the teams and all the people right now who are sitting here debating whether or not Fernando's best or Ty's best, tell me where he's going. Tell me what he has around him. Tell me who's calling the plays for him. And then I'll be able to really accurately assess what I think ultimately his upside is in the NFL. And if he gets to a place like the LA Rams, which is one of the places I've tied him to from the very beginning, and I don't know if they're going to take him or not, I would put my money on the fact that this kid's going to have a hell of a career.
Yeah, I think he's a 10-year starter in that regard. I think the location that Lewis is referencing where he's going to get drafted feels appropriate. It's going to come down to this. If you're the general manager selecting him, you're going to watch the tape this year and you're going to say, the tape and the play on the tape is greater than my fear of the amount of starts or the size. And if you don't, I can understand that. I can get that. I can appreciate the discussion of there's the historical evidence of starts and size, all that. But I do think there's going to be general managers that say the tape is just too good.
And very quickly, Mike T, for all the people who are saying, well, the 27 draft is supposed to have all these quarterbacks and you should wait for that. What's a GM think of that?
There's a million variables between now and then in terms of your team may be better than expected. Somebody else may retire. Big injuries. You just never know. Some of those players may not be as good as we thought. They may stay into 28. Way too many variables. One last factor.
Yep.
The third quarterback falls off a cliff in this draft. That's why I think Ty Simpson will also get the benefit of the doubt sooner than later.
All right, Lewis will be there all day long at Ohio State. We'll have much more from him.